I am hate. When you look at me, you look at hate.
When I look at you, I look at hate.
When you look at me, you know what hate is.
Hey everybody, this is Atticus the Death Miller, and welcome to a very exciting and special episode of the TheDeathMetaller Reviews. Here in this episode, we are going to be reviewing Whitechapel and their latest release, The Valley, based on a true story. And before we get down onto the review, let us first go into a little history and bio of the band. Now shall we? This world is 2008. It was a very important year for me. The Great Awakening of 2007 was long past me, and I was yearning to hear something new, something aggressive, something intense. And my calls were answered when I discovered deathcore. I know. A lot of people shit on the subgenre of deathcore, but to a 16-year-old Atticus the Death Metaller, this was a gold mine for me. Here I discovered such bands like All Shall Perish, The Acacia Strain, Suicide Silence, Board of Osiris, Despised Icon, The Red Chord, Carnifex, Oceano, and The Red Shore. But there was one band that really caught my eyes on how brutal and unique their sound was. Whitechapel. This band I dubbed the Iron Maiden of deathcore, since, they have like 3 guitars, so that was like my mindset back then. While most deathcore bands formed in California, like the thrash bands before them in the 80s, Whitechapel got their humble start in Knoxville, Tennessee in the year 2006. They derived their name from the infamous district in London, England, where Jack the Ripper did his gruesome murders in the dawn of the 20th century. Whitechapel have stated they are influenced by a wide variety of artists, including Cannibal Corpse, Meshuggah, Slipknot, Dying Fetus, Bloodbath, Pantera, Metallica, Slayer, Suffocation, Behemoth, Nile, Gojira, Vader, Necrophagist, and Cal Decapitation. In an interview, Phil Bozeman, the vocalist, explained that him and lead guitarist Ben Savage were more of the death metal types. Guitarist Zach Householder was more into the black metal, and guitarist Alex Wade has more of a hardcore background, which explains on how their music tastes have shaped the very being of their band, Whitechapel. Whitechapel has gained quite a following over the years, landing number 43 on the Billboard 200 chart with their third release, New Era of Corruption. The self-titled album debuted at number 47 on the Billboard 200, selling roughly 9,200 copies in its first week. Our endless war to generally positive reviews, the album sold roughly 16,000 copies in its first week and debuted at number 10 on the Billboard 200. And their 6th full-length album, Mark of the Blade, in 2016, to greater critical acclaim, selling roughly 8,000 copies in the first week of its release. Without a doubt, this world is theirs. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let us delve down into the true story behind The Valley. The Valley was produced and mixed by none other than Mark Lewis. Now, I really do like Mark Lewis's work. Mark Lewis has worked with such great metal bands such as the very following: Cataclysm, Jaw for a Cowboy, The Black Dahlia Murder, Cold Chamber, Devil Driver, Cannibal Corpse, and Demon Hunter. The Valley also is the album that features the drummer Naveen Kopervice off of Ethnos as the studio drums, since Ben Harcelode quit the band not too long ago. So I don't know if they got a new drummer or so for tours or something. But yeah, Kopervice was responsible for the studio drums off of this album. Now, I really do think that The Valley is a really good album, much better than Mark of the Blade. But I also do think that The Valley also should be on the same level as This Is Exile.
Hello, Atticus the Death Metaller. Why are you comparing this work to that of This Is Exile? This Is Exile is amazing and it completely destroys The Valley over its brutality and intensity off of Whitechapel's earlier work.
Now, why do I say that? Why do I say that The Valley is comparable to that of This Is Exile? Now, don't get me wrong, I think This Is Exile is one of Whitechapel's most greatest works. It was their second release and is still considered in my heart one of their best releases. But I think that The Valley deserves the same credit as This Is Exile, just due to the fact that this is such a groundbreaking album that the band has done. And it mostly centers around the vocalist, Phil Bozeman. Now, I know a lot of people have gone after me when I talked about Phil Bozeman on one of my earlier videos, that I got his last name wrong, Bozeman. Well, yeah, it's Bozeman. Bozeman, alright? There. I learned my lesson on how it is so wrong of me to mispronounce his name. But yeah, Phil Bozeman happens to be one of my favorite vocalists. I mean, fucking hell, I met him in 2010, and I was so pumped into meeting one of my favorite vocalists. I think he's a very good metal vocalist. I love his vocal range and his vocal style, especially his growls and his deep guttural vocals that he does in some of Whitechapel's work, their early work mostly. But it is with this album in which he really puts on more of his clean singing. Now, yes, we first were introduced to his clean singing in Mark of the Blade, which I will admit, it's not one of their best releases. It's a pretty vanilla album, but in The Valley, he really shows off of his diversity and versatility of The Valley, and it works so well. I mean, his clean singing sounds a mix between Maynard James Keenan of Tool and A Perfect Circle, Benjamin Burnley of Breaking Benjamin, and Giannis Rensk of Catatonia. I think he's been listening to a lot of Tool, Perfect Circle, Catatonia, and Breaking Benjamin, from my opinion, while working on The Valley. That's just my initial thoughts and opinions onto this, and it works. It really does work with The Valley. Now, when it comes to the inspiration of The Valley is pretty much a concept album in regards to Phil Bozeman's past, mostly during his time growing up as a child. Now, if you want to know more about Phil Bozeman's life, his early life, I have a video down onto the description below that he made during his upbringing, and it shows a lot of the stuff that he dealt with as a child, and he brought it all forth onto The Valley. In an interview that he did with Exclaim, it stated here that this time around, Bozeman wanted to offer a more complete picture of his life. The vocalist tackles his issues with religion, abuse, and neglect with a raw transparency that shows maturity the band has gained since starting out as teenagers. Bozeman explains he felt it was a perfect match for the band's dark approach, and he could create something positive from his experience. Before, when we first started out, we were young kids, and we just wanted to be the most brutal thing we could possibly be. But when you get older, you take things more seriously. Throughout the album, listeners hear the story told from a few different viewpoints. Bozeman as a child, him as an adult reflecting on his childhood views, and his mother through her own words. The vocalist had held onto a journal his late mother wrote and incorporated some of the disturbing words she wrote directly into the lyrics. I never implemented it, but after reading through it thoroughly, I just thought this is a great content for a record. And not even just a record, it could have been turned into a story or a book or a movie or something. It was just good material that needed to be heard. I think a lot of stuff pertains to us as a band, and that the whole dark theme, because it's a true life story, based on the whole thing of based on a true story on the album cover of The Valley. Bozeman also stated on an interview with Loudwire, saying this: "I feel like I'm honored to be able to share that with someone. I get different stories all the time, whether it's someone who came up in a bad upbringing or someone that's going through a tough personal issue currently. It sounds weird to say, but it's nice to hear because we all relate to it and we connect that way, but I think it's more of an emotional feeling to have through the music with these people. It's hard to really stay connected with these people because they're not in our everyday lives. So what you say to them has to be the most important thing right then and there. You never know when the next time you'll be able to talk to this person, because me talking to them could save their life from taking their own life the next night or next week or something. It's just wild knowing that I've had that impact over the course of our careers so far. And this also brings up the whole fucking trend back in the early 2010s with the I remember back then I was super annoyed with that shit, but now as I'm a 27-year-old man, it kind of really relates to my current situation right now because, I mean, I'm going through some shit right now and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. I can't go into any more details, but when the time comes, I'll let you know. But it can somewhat relate to that, and of course, you know, the famous quote that the late Mitch Lucker said, just listen to music. It helps. And there are a lot of songs that get me through a lot of tough times and all that other shit. It's not me saying, oh my god, this band saved my life. It's just people can cope through various songs and stuff. It gets them through a lot of tough times and stuff. And my thoughts and opinions on musical artists that make songs about personal experiences that they've dealt with and been through, I encourage it. I absolutely fucking encourage it. I mean, like, a lot of metal musicians I listen to pour their hearts and emotions out onto a lot of, you know, of their songs. Like, for instance, Jonathan Davis of Korn with the song Daddy, in which, you know, it explains on how he was abused as a child by his own father. It's a pretty fucked up song. Same could be said with the late Chester Bennington of Linkin Park. A lot of his, you know, lyrics off of Linkin Park were dealing with him through his mental illness and depression. I mean, I absolutely encourage artists to do that stuff because it relates to people like me and other people. Now, I say that this is going to be a very special episode of the Death Metal Reviews because this is going to be the very first time in where I, yours truly, is going to be reviewing every song off of this album. So, I mean, it was quite the challenge trying to really listen to all the lyrics. I had to study all of the lyrics of every song off of this album and incorporate it onto this review. So, ladies and gentlemen, strap in, grab a beer, grab some popcorn, get you some cookies, some ice cream, some cake. Just pig yourselves out onto this video because this is going to be one wild ride. So strap in, ladies and gents, because we are gonna get ready right now to review all the songs of The Valley. The first track on this list is When a Demon Defiles a Witch. Now, this is the first song, and it is a very strong, aggressive start onto The Valley. Now, the concept and the inspiration of this album mostly really pertains to that of the relationship between Phil Bozeman's mother and his stepfather. Now, if you all watch some of Phil Bozeman's videos on his YouTube channel, you would know that his father died a few days after Christmas due to a rare heart condition, which, you know, really devastated him, and thus, you know, his mom remarried to his stepfather, who was a cripple from a work-related accident, so he was basically, like, crippled from the waist down, and his stepfather was pretty much a cunt, in which he enabled and took advantage of his mother and basically turned her into a crack addict. So yeah, that really explains, you know, when a demon defiles a witch. The whole concept, the whole concept and the inspiration of the title of the song. Now, I love this track because, first off, it is a very aggressive start. You get the blend between Phil Bozeman's growls as well as his clean singing onto this album. It is beautiful on the bridge of the song as well. It ends calmly, but throughout this song, it's a pretty aggressive song that has blends of hardcore mixed in with deathcore elements onto this track. Have a listen. track off of this list is Forgiveness is Weakness. Now, I will indeed say, and this is my opinion, this is one of the most heaviest songs Whitechapel has ever made. Now, don't get me wrong, Whitechapel has made a lot of aggressive songs musically with, you know, the blast beats and the riffs, breakdowns, and solos that they have made over the years. But when it comes to lyric-wise, this is a very heavy song. And this song, to me personally, it screams pure bitterness. Now, I would say that this is a song directed towards his stepfather. I mean, like, fucking hell, his stepfather turned his mom into a crack addict. So I can see why that this song screams absolute resentment, hatred, and bitterness. Now, I don't know if his stepfather did die. I'm pretty sure he did die. I think, you know, all of you would let me know in the comments. But yeah, I could see why that he would have such resentment and such bitterness and just be glad that his stepfather is finally dead. And like, I mean, all you guys, mostly to everyone of my viewers and you yourself, you viewer watching this video right now, I mean, all of you have dealt with abusive members of your family. Like, I mean, whether it's your biological parents, your step parents, or your foster parents, or even your aunts, uncles, and grandparents, mind you. And hearing the news that they've died, it just makes you happy that they're finally dead. And of course, you all know that I do have friends that have dealt with abusive members in their family. I mean, hell, one of my best friends, Official GATG, and his well-known story about that one time where he was joking around at a church play and his father basically did probably the most fucked up thing towards Stoutmeister when he was young. And yeah, I mean, all of us have dealt with abusive members in our family. I mean, thankfully, I've never had any, you know, members of my family that were bitter or, you know, were abusive towards me, except for that one time where my uncle's former wife, my former aunt, did a lot of very unforgivable things to my uncle, and for many years, I was very bitter towards my former aunt. But as of right now, I guess, I mean, I moved on that stage, but I will never forget on what my former aunt did. But I'm not as bitter as I was back then onto her. But I could see this as a song to all of you people watching this video who have listened to Forgiveness is Weakness as a celebration to a family member of yours that hurt you physically, emotionally, and even sexually. Hearing that they've died as just a celebration. I mean, I could see Cody, Daddy 05's biological son, just, you know, dancing to joy off of this song when when he hears the news that somehow Mike Martin, aka Daddy 05, dies a brutal death. I could see him doing that. I mean, yeah, the song is basically dedicated to Daddy 05. I mean, wouldn't you guys agree with me on that? But yeah, the song is aggressive musically, but it's mostly lyrically that is so intense off of this song. It's venomous, it is bitterness into this song.
It's finally dead. Come celebrate this day. It was slow and full of pain. Good riddance, I hope you're born again, so I can have my turn to
The next song on the list is Brimstone. Now, this was the first single off of Whitechapel, and to be really frank, I wasn't a big fan of the song lyric-wise, but I was pretty pumped nonetheless that Whitechapel was going to bring off a concept album in regards to Phil Bozeman's childhood. Now, the song lyrically, you know, it screams like delusions and just, you know, paranoia, mostly from like his mother's perspective of like the stepfather, like but personally from my point of view, I really think that this song, how I picture this song is like me Walking through a burning forest. I mean, with the title of the song Brimstone, it's like, you know, hell, fire, and brimstone. I usually think of this song of like walking through a burning forest, and you know, it feels like you're walking through hell with this song playing. Now, I would say this is a very vanilla track, but with, you know, the setting and how I feel about this song, I do feel like you're walking through a burning forest. The next track off of this list is probably one of my favorite tracks off of this album, Hickory Creek. Now, this is a pretty goddamn emotional song, and it is the first Whitechapel track in which we hear no growls or screams or gutturals from Phil Bozeman, but we hear his clean singing at its full zenith. I will indeed say he is a damn good singer off of this track. Now, this song is in dedication to his mother passing, and it's basically, you know, a follow-up to the track Bring Me Home, which the music video showed that it was dedicated to his late father. Now, I think it makes more sense that you would make a track and dedicate it to your mother, you know, in memory of her. And I think that's, you know, a very noble thing to do onto that situation. Now, I think all of us can agree onto here that when you lose a loved one, whether it's a friend or a family member or a pet, it is absolute hell trying to go through the 5 stages of grief. I mean, let me tell you, I've dealt with death in my family. I've dealt with the passing of my old dog Mickey, my uncle Phil, and my cousin's wife died from opioid addictions. And last year, my aunt from Scotland died from ovarian cancer, lost her battle to ovarian cancer. And this year, I mean, late January, I lost one of my friends, Big Nick. And really, when I heard this song for the first time, it really, even to, you know, listening to it, it really hits me emotionally, especially the parts of the lyrics of the song, "The worst is yet to come, my friend." And, you know, when the "my friend" comes out here, it always brings me back when I think of Big Nick, because Big Nick always said, "my friend," in a lot of his, on what he talks about. You know, just typical discussions, but that song really, it really made me think a lot of Big Nick listening to that track, and just, excuse me if I get emotional, but it's never easy. Just when you think that, you know, you're done with the grieving process, it's never that easy trying to deal with it. Still to this day, I miss Big Nick, and I think, you know, my other friends would agree. He was such a good guy, and I feel that this was a good tribute that Phil Bozeman made for his late mother. I think it was very appropriate, and it really shows that he fucking nailed it with the clean singing off of this track. It really, really, really shows. But to bring a little bit of humor here, at least it was better than a self-titled album of a certain band. But in truth, I mean, All Shall Perish did make a couple of songs with clean singing, mostly of Awaken the Dreamers with Memories of a Glass Sanctuary, and I really thought that Eddie Hermida was gonna bring out all of that onto the self-titled album of Suicide Silence, but Suicide Silence is a shell of once they once were. But enough about that. Have a listen to Hickory Creek.
This path I walk is comforting, but now I'm left to sing this song alone. I'm fading faster now. It's time to walk away with nothing left.
The next next track off of this list is Black Bear. Now, this was a pretty damn genty song. I mean, again, it's one of their tame songs off of The Valley, but I did like it nonetheless. It was a guilty pleasure of mine, but as I read through the lyrics, it's in the perspective of his mother, Phil Bozeman's mother, talking about, you know, the stepfather once again. Now, I mean, yeah, like, you know, the stepfather was a cripple, but it did not mean that he was a pretty manipulative fuck in those regards right there. I mean, even though he was crippled, I mean, he made Phil Bozeman's mom into a crack addict. And, you know, this song really just, you know, screams it over him as a predator, henceforth a black bear. Now, I mean, most people think that like grizzly bears are, you know, terrifying and are aggressive ass bears, but it's black bears. Black bears honestly are the ones that you should be really, you know, looking out for. I mean, my state of Florida, I do know, has a good population of black bears, but black bears are the kinds of bears that you really need to look out for. But it does not mean that grizzly bears are also fucking terrifying monsters and shit. But speaking of bears, this song in some ways reminds me of that scene of The Revenant where Hugh Glass gets mauled by the grizzly. That's what I think about this song right there. Track on the list is We Are One. Now, this is one of Whitechapel's fast-paced and aggressive songs that I really do like when it comes to loving Whitechapel, but I will say it is one of the band's songs, I would say mostly in regards to religion. Now, I mean, Whitechapel has made other songs about religion. I mean, it's no stranger that metal bands do sing a lot of songs about religion and also shitting all over religion, mostly black metal bands, but I think it's mostly just, you know, low-hanging fruit when you bash the shit out of Christianity. I think it's just, you know, every metalhead's favorite pastime is just burning churches down and shit. But, yeah, this song is mostly about religion over here. The band have never been shy about discussing religion in their music in the past, but like most topics on the new album, it comes across more rawly than before. Bozeman says he was raised like any other typical Southern American family, with a heavy dose of Christianity mixed into his upbringing, but as he grew older, he started to reconsider what he had been told to think. Although he isn't vehemently anti-religion, he has completely removed himself from that world. My whole thing on it is, I don't care what anybody believes, it's not anything I would base somebody off of, he says. I think it keeps people from being crazy, and I also think it corrupts a lot of minds, and that all depends on how you were raised and how you deal with it. And that's my initial views on how I view religion today. Now, if you all remember when I first started this channel, I was like really angsty and just wanting to bash the shit out of Christians after watching like a shit ton of videos off of The Amazing Atheist. But yeah, like, those of you who know my early start on my channel know that I would bash the shit out of religion, mostly Christianity. And, you know, I was raised in a Catholic family. Now, I thought long and hard whether I really wanted to, you know, live in this Christian Catholic lifestyle, and I realized that it's just really not the lifestyle for me. But I necessarily do not hate my family that is all Catholic. Now, I will definitely agree that the Catholic Church has a lot of skeletons being pulled out of the closet, and they shield a lot of really creepy ass motherfuckers. But do I really think that a lot of people who are Catholic are all bad and are enabling, you know, this type of shit? No, I don't think so, and all that shit. But it still is, you know, a harsh reality that the Catholic Church really does this shit. That's just my initial viewpoints. And I think, you know, my initial thoughts onto Islam, I'm not very fond of it, and I do criticize a lot about Islam. I still think to this day that Islam needs a lot of reformations, just like with that of Christianity. But, you know, the Catholic Church really needs to stop doing all this shit, protecting actual known child molesters in the church. But, that's just my viewpoints onto religion. But yeah, it's a song that mostly deals with religion there and all that shit. The next track on the list is The Other Side. It's another fast-paced as well as a very groovy song off of Whitechapel's The Valley. Now, I would say, after reading some of the lyrics off of this song, it's pretty much Phil Bozeman, meeting up with all the guys of Whitechapel, Ben Savage, Alex Wade, Zach Householder, and Gabe Crisp. And I forgot who the original drummer was, but I do know of Kevin Lane when he was with, Whitechapel's first few albums, mostly This Is Exile and New Era of Corruption. But it's mostly just Phil Bozeman just really burying most of all of his stuff that he dealt with in the past and being side by side with his brothers, aka his fellow bandmates, and, being, a stronger person. And I think that's all of us what we need to strive to be. I think all of us have dealt with stuff that we regret and all the other stuff, but we learn from it and it makes us better people in the end. The next song on the list is Third Death. Now this is another one of my favorite songs off of The Valley. It's another song that features Phil Bozeman's clean singing throughout this song. Now Phil sounds a bit like a mix between Benjamin Burnley of Breaking Benjamin and Jonas Rensk of Catatonia in this track. Now this song sounds a bit like, both Breaking Benjamin and Catatonia in one band into this song. Now, I think it's a very good song. How I feel about listening to this song, if you remember when I imagined Brimstone walking through a burning forest, now Third Death is like walking through the aftermath of the forest after it was burned. It's all into cinder and ash and smoke. And this song really does speak a lot of emotional and mental instabilities where you're mentally vulnerable, like in some of the lyrics say, I'm not stable, and it really does feel that way. It's a calm song as well, despite the choruses being Phil Bozeman's traditional growls into the chorus. But it's a pretty emotionally turmoiling song. Pretty good how it mixes both the calm and the angry into it, onto this track. The next song on this list is the track Lovelace. And it's another one of those very lyrically as well as musically aggressive tracks, and it is definitely a very lyrically harsh song. Not like that of Forgiveness is Weakness, but it's mostly in tune onto detailing the mental strife and the mental battle over Phil's mother, from what I do believe that this song is all about. Because, remember, like Phil Bozeman, he was inspired most of the lyrics for this album off of this journal that his mother was writing. Now it really shows on how incredibly it just feels that it feels like you're mentally unstable, and it feels like you're battling in your mind with or a conflict into your mind, as well as, how musically aggressive that this song is. It really is a quite amazing, as well as, a very frightening song on how terrifying you know, reading from a journal of mental illness can really be. And as I will say many times, mental illness is a plague upon humanity. It really fucking is. And, you know, it's very unfortunate that Phil's mother really had to battle with, you know, her mental illness as well as, you know, being addicted to crack through his stepfather. It's I can't imagine what he had to see all that stuff. But yeah, have a listen. And now we go to our final track, though I will indeed bring up the bonus track here. But this is the final track off of the album, Doomwoods. Now, this is indeed, you know, the ending track, but it also really speaks on how Phil Bozeman grew up to, you know, being a boy from being a man. So essentially, you know, after he lost both his parents, his biological parents, and I do believe his stepfather died as well, he really had to become, you know, the man in sort of many ways. Now, I think most of you watching this video can really relate because, I mean, most of you probably have lost family in your life, and also, I mean, even though it sucks losing people in your family, but it also in many regards made you grow up a little bit more faster and, you know, take charge of the other people into your family and basically just, you know, grow up and take a lot more responsibilities into your life. And so in many ways I can see this as a song on how Phil had to really grow up after losing his mother and father and thus becoming the man that he is today. I think it's a pretty good song in where Phil has really shown that despite all of the stuff that he went through as a child, I mean, he did grow up in a very loving family, but it all went to shit after the death of his father, and then, you know, his mom remarrying to his really shit stepfather, and then his mother basically becoming a very fragile woman mentally, and thus being addicted to crack. And it just really shows, I mean, all the stuff that he's really been through, and, you know, aside from all of this stuff he's went through, it really, in some regards, has made him, you know, grow bit stronger, made him, and it molded him into the person that he is today. And I'm really glad that he really made an album, a concept album, in description of his early life. And I think it's a really good thing to really bring your story out there.
They say don't walk to the darker side, but where the light shines, the devil is alive. I've seen hell through a child's eyes, and I know in time the devil I will find. The devil I will find.
And now we go to the final track, Sea of Trees. Now, there's nothing really much more to say about this song other than the fact that I do think that this song is an inspiration of the Suicide Forest, aka Okigahara Forest, aka the forest in where Logan Paul exploited a dead corpse. that forest. But I will indeed say this is by far the traditional Whitechapel song off of this album. Traditional as in, like, you know, this is Exile, Somatic Defilement, and New Era of Corruption. Traditional Whitechapel song right there. It's pretty goddamn aggressive right there. So have a listen, kiddies. The Valley, I will indeed say, is probably one of Whitechapel's best work throughout their entire career. Now, I will say it's not as musically heavy as This Is Exile, The Somatic Defilement, or New Era of Corruption, or their self-titled release, but I will say it is probably one of their best lyrically written albums ever. Phil Bozeman is at his A game right there. He is willing to show his diverse range of his aggressive growls, gutturals, and screams, as well as his beautiful melodic and melancholic lyrics of his clean singing. He is willing to show off his past, sharing it to the world, letting everyone know that they're not struggling alone with harsh times as he did as a child. And I think everyone can really relate to his story in so many ways. The Valley indeed is quite one of the best albums I have heard so far in 2019. The Valley, without a doubt, gets a 9 out of 10 for this review. So, what did you guys think about The Valley? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you like the new direction that Whitechapel is going? Or do you prefer the old songs, the old albums that Whitechapel brought out during their early careers? I want to know. Leave your comments down below. And stay tuned for more videos. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I am Atticus the Death Metaller. Hope you like this video. Subscribe to my channel. Links are down in the description below. Keep it metal and have an excellent and blessed day, y'all. Cheers.